And welcome to Conservatives Talk.
We got a pretty big one again this week.
We absolutely do.
I mean, for starters, Biden says MAGA is the real threat to democracy.
And is this part of the simulation?
Speaking of simulations, will he or won't he? Because it looks like he just did.
And he really stepped in it when he did. And on top of that, social justice warriors are telling kids not to call the police when they see trouble.
And Buck's not only rolling around laughing on the floor about that, but Democrats actually think that they're going to win both the House and the Senate in 2023. And we'll explain that in the Conspiracy Corner.
And welcome back to Conservatives Talk. And as always, we always like to remind everyone that's a viewer of ours to make sure that they like and share any of the content that they run across any of the platforms that we put any of our productions out on. And make sure you also hit the subscribe button as well. That way you can keep up to date with any of the productions that we make and we put out there on the Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever. We do kind of have a big announcement. We will be on Veterans Voice on YouTube. We are an affiliate now of Net News Network.
Yeah.
So we're starting to gain a lot of attraction, and we're getting a lot of attraction, and we're gaining a lot of attention as well. So we're becoming more and more of kind of, I want to say, the household mainstream name. Kind of make my head swell.
It's kind of crazy.
It really is. I'll be honest with you. I did not expect this when we first started out. I thought we would just kind of be the show that was coming out of the basement.
Hey, look at us.
But in addition to that, subscribing, liking, sponsor. Make sure if you're able to go to our website there on the screen. That's conservativestalk.org. And hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and help us out with what you're able to. Our sponsorships go an incredibly long way. We're able, every one of those, every single cent that comes in really comes right back into the show. It doesn't go to Jamie and I. It really helps us to be able to make a better production, to be able to have better quality, to really bring you more and to get it spread a lot further than what we're able to. And while you're there, make sure you're also signing up for our email list there on the main page. That way you can get on board with what we're going to be rolling out. And I know I continually say that, and we haven't yet been able to do it because it's still something that is, it's a very large undertaking.
Yeah.
But with our bi-weekly email that we'll be sending out, kind of our newsletter deal. And the first newsletter that we sent out, I promise will have details for the national or the what we're working on and what we're putting together that will have national implication. And I can absolutely assure you that what we are putting together will be nationally recognized and it will be significant in a way that I can guarantee you that you'll see it in just about every mainstream area that you're able to with that. So with that, let's roll into our cancel list.
Boycott hometown headlines.
Absolutely. I love saying this part.
Yeah. Say less.
Honesty. I love that we're doing this. I absolutely do. I love that we created the hashtag for it.
Here's the thing, right? And here's the thing for our viewers. I think, and I'm just going to say it bluntly, I think that if Rome News Tribune continues to go with their deal with hometown headlines, then I say we unsubscribe to them too. I say that we boycott hometown headlines to the full extent,
including the parent company. Now
we already realize that, you know, I mean, they can't even pay for deliveries anymore. They have to send it through the postal service. I can't, you know, I mean, I'd stop paying my subscription. I went straight to my little banking app and said, you know, stop paying. And that's just the reality of it. It's already dwindling. They're literally just sending out hit pieces to against conservatives. and they're doing it through the eye of a columnist where they're somewhat protected. So you know what? If they continue with the deal with Hometown Headlines, stop subscribing to them.
I concur. So let's roll into your favorite part on this.
Yes. 66 days until we beat Stacey Abrams. Cannot wait.
The countdown is thrilling.
It's exciting, isn't it?
It really is. In all honesty, I cannot wait until we no longer have to hear her shrill voice or see her photo on any of our local news outlets.
So I do have to tell this story. Okay. Very, very, very briefly, because I think it's funny. Okay.
Is this about how she violated the IRS tax code by holding a rally at a church?
Something way more pettier, but it is about that, right? So here's the thing. You know me, sometimes you got to play the game. And Stacey, for those of you who don't know, came to Cave Spring, Georgia, which is inside of Floyd County as well.
And thank you for getting that right.
You're welcome. I've been practicing.
I've noticed.
Now, the hard part is since they've closed the school, there is not really a gathering place inside of this community that's, has an enclosed venue. So they went inside of the only place that had a fellowship hall, which was a local church. There were members of this church or this church organizational community that I'm a part of that, question it. So I called the pastor and I'll let her know, I don't, because here's
breaking IRS tax code.
Well, here's the other thing. I said, because I will be darsh garnet. You hear me? I will be darsh garnet if, for whatever reason, 10 people who came to see Stacey Abrams in good old Cave Springs make it look like I'm threatened by it.
You were good the first time, then you messed
Cave
up
Spring.
the second.
Look, it just rolls off the tongue with the extra S. But anyway, my whole point is I was like, well, just make sure that you communicate this, make sure you're not putting your 501c3 in jeopardy, because you're also putting the rest of our 501c3 in jeopardy because we're one organization. Just think about it. My whole point in telling this story is, and as anyone who's in politics knows, turnout was awful when the next day you get a phone call from the Georgia Department of Transportation because someone had reported that the opposition, Governor Kemp's signs, were in the wrong spot. I got a phone call from the Georgia Department of Transportation that said, as we just want to let you know that leading into Cave Spring and all the way up to the location of this church, there were signs for Governor Kemp inside of the right of way. So someone called and reported it. That means probably
Stacey did herself.
I don't even have to call and ask. I know probably 5 people showed up. And look, I know probably at least 2 or 3 of them were Republicans.
There were a hefty bit of Republicans there. I can guarantee you that much.
So they had a bad time here in Floyd County, and I love it.
Yes, anytime Stacey has a bad time in any county, I'm all for it.
Let's roll into the show. I just had to.
That's a great story. I love that one.
It's
actually
great.
So let's talk about the first topic in this. So what we said in the opening of this is that essentially is Biden has put out there that the MAGA group of the Republican Party is the absolute real threat to democracy.
The true hypocrisy here.
Yes.
We gotta leading into this, right? We got a Roman special that's coming up pretty soon.
Yes, we do.
And between the Roman special and this episode, like, the hypocrisy that's being thrown across the Democratic Party is daunting.
Yeah, it's well, let's be honest, it's not just the Democrat Party, but it's the nonpartisan party. The nonpartisan and the Democrat Party. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But so so what we're going to do is we're going to play you a clip of Biden's last pit stop on his tour of Northeast the United States and what he said in part of his speech. And we've got several of these, and we're going to comment on each of these, but we're going to play the first one real fast right now.
And it's not hyperbole. Now you need to vote to literally save democracy again. Look, I believe America's at a genuine inflection point. It occurs every 6 or 7 generations in world history. One of the moments that changes everything. And Americans are going to have to choose. You must choose. Will we be a country that moves forward or backward? Will we build a future or obsess over the past? Will we be a nation of unity, of hope, of optimism? Not a nation of anger, violence, hatred, and division. Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans have made their choice to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division. But we've chosen a different path. Forward, the future, unity, hope, and optimism.
So the whole emphasis behind all this is that MAGA, the MAGA movement is what is the actual real threat to democracy.
So I got to say this, though. I have to say it. What he said was right.
Interesting.
But here's the difference, though. All the things that he's claiming that MAGA and the Republicans are doing is literally what Democrats did. They seized a city, they looted and burned down other cities, all leading up to him being elected.
So to clarify with that, because we may get kicked off of any platform we're on, or especially in the pickups with that, he's not saying the Democrats are correct in what they were saying with that. He essentially what he's saying is that I'm guessing that they are kind of it was almost kind of the Freudian look on that.
It's like he stole our speech.
Yes, what we were saying about them.
What we've been saying about them for years,
and what they have done. The actual evidence of what they've done.
Like, if it was anybody,
not that the MAGA movement's done it.
Yeah, if it was anybody other than him that said this, you're pretty spot on, because the Democrats have done this to us for the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they burned cities. They literally burned cities. They literally came in, took over cities. Not only just anywhere, not just cities that were far across the country, but even here at home in Georgia, they took over areas of cities.
That's what I say. That's
when the officer involved shooting with Garrett Rolfe at the Wendy's there. They took over the little area there.
The hypocrisy here is astounding and astonishing, honestly. You know what I mean? Just at the fact that, I was joking earlier, but the fact that he can come up here and sit on this stage knowing what his party has done. They have taken away police in cities.
Yes,
they have allowed for all this heinous act to go on across the country. And for him to get up there and literally look the people in the eye and say that MAGA's the problem and that they're here for hope. Hope for who? Yeah.
Well, I mean, his own vice president was sharing the Minnesota bail bond link on her social media platform, to where you were having these folks who were rioting and who were looting and everything else being arrested. And then our vice president was raising money to have them bailed out because it was social injustice, or at least in her mindset anyway.
Yep.
So let's take a look at the next one on this one. I think this one's interesting itself as well.
And the whole notion of the burn it all down politics of MAGA Republicans continues to be a drumbeat.
So the burn it all down method in politics, he says that we have the whole burn it all down when you see a lot of the newer defund movements coming out of the Republican Party via the federal establishments, because we have absolutely seen that these federal establishments have nothing but political corruption within themselves on this. So that's where I think that's where he's coming off on the burn it all down. However, like what you noted earlier, they actually burned stuff down.
Burned it down.
Literally burned down businesses, organizations, buildings, courtrooms,
you name it.
Literally
police
burned
officers started riots in the streets. Like, I mean, the whole Proud Boy movement came after trying to fight them because they wanted to stop what was going on in their community.
Well, I think it's also significant to note that something that just came to me that I should have said earlier. But when he was talking about how his party is the antithesis of the MAGA movement, the MAGA movement or MAGA stands for Make America Great Again. So it's not to destroy or anything along that. It is to make America great.
It's a nationalist movement. It's believing. It's taking the belief of actually putting America first again.
Absolutely.
Instead of trying to
policies,
like and
way to go.
And you know what? Again, he said it just exactly how he meant it. Because here's someone who in the middle of our oil crisis, and I'm gonna call it a crisis because we literally went from $1.62 to $4.50, $5.
And even though it's down now for a little bit, when I say down, it's down like $1. It's getting ready to rebound and skyrocket back up again, according to reports. So.
And Joe Biden sold oil to China.
And is still selling oil to China, and his son Hunter is involved in the deal.
So think about that. He says that he's the antithesis of America, Make America Great Again, of the MAGA group. He's right.
He is the antithesis of Make America Great Again.
Because he's sending funds to Ukraine and China, and you know what I mean, he's blowing the bank here, whether it benefits you or not, and then turning around and saying, you know what, we need to stop them who want to bring jobs and everything back to America.
Absolutely. Turning over all of our medical, we'll call it independence, over to the WHO. You're giving all of these, what he is describing, or what he goes on to describe it here in a little bit, talking about these massive corporations that aren't paying for their fair share of all this stuff, giving them massive tax cuts with the CHIP Act. So he's the hypocrisy is getting way steep now.
Here's the thing. Like, I understand a certain level of globalism, a certain level, right? But you have to have a nationalist feel. Like, you know what I mean? What's the point then?
Well, only globalism if it is the America First policy going forward.
I agree, right? Because here's my whole thing is I do not mind that if in a time of true crisis, we lend support, we lend help. That's what treaties are for. That's kind of going back to the beginning age. But at the extent of destroying or not helping the American people is what I have a problem with. If we want to lend and give out $40 billion to another country and leave $80 billion worth of weaponry, why are you taking guns from American people and we still have homeless people?
So that was another big part of this that I didn't include with some of the clips on here, is he hit on the fact that they were going to take our quote unquote assault weapons away from Americans because these weapons of war do not, citizens should not be able to deserve them.
He's going to take them and give them to the IRS.
Well, exactly. So they don't have to spend part of that $86 billion is coming to them to bring in all these extra IRS agents. They can just go ahead and arm them with American weaponry. And that's something else that we're going to, that I would really like to, we're talking in the works and expanding on some of that, what is an actual weapon of war. Something else that signing up for the email list and everything will help us out with and getting this out. So let's roll into the next clip on this, because quite frankly, I mean, this man gave us a litany of things to look at on this. So here's the next one.
Look, every election is a choice. My dad used to have a saying. He said, Joey, don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative. Well, the alternative to the Democrats are the MAGA Republicans.
Did he just describe the Democrat Party as being equivalent to the Almighty?
I think that's the analogy he was using. I think that's probably.
In all honesty, I don't think we really need to say much more about that.
Nope.
Joe Biden just described the Democrat Party in comparison with the Almighty.
Pedo Peter just explained himself. And if you don't know who Pedo Peter is, that's what his son calls him.
Yeah. So let's look at the next one real fast.
My friends, we offer a starkly different version and vision of this country, a vision of a better America. That's within our reach. That's within our hands if we just vote. If we elect 2 more senators, we keep the House and Democrats, we're going to get a lot of unfinished business we're going to get done.
So he's right. They do offer a very stark comparison to conservatives versus the Democrats, because conservatives are all about making sure the people here have a good life. They're not encumbered by a massive amount of national debt, that the business industry here is thriving and well, that we're able to have the energy needs met that we have. And sadly enough to say, I also think he may have stroked out there at the end of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a massive gaffe right there, because he's talking about electing 2 senators, and from what I was able to understand from some of that, he was talking about electing 2 senators to the House. So I'm a little bit confused with that one, because there's going to be a much larger difference between the House and the Senate on that one.
So, like, to me, that was definitely a moment, because, I mean,
it's definitely something.
When you punch the numbers, right, there's no, I mean, it's a huge swing towards the right in the House. Like, that's all, they should already count that as a loss. Okay.
Absolutely. And again, something we're going to get to here in a little bit.
Yeah.
So don't spoil it.
Yeah, I know. We're going to leave that segment for later.
So let's look at the next one. The next one I think is kind of telling, especially from the hypocrisy stance of it. So here's the next one.
And we're not glad anyone or anything tear America apart.
Not going to let anyone or anything tear America apart. Yet that
They're
is exactly what Joe Biden has done for the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm. I mean, right down the middle.
Well, I mean, not just down the middle. I mean, he's even losing members of his own party. There are members of the House that are in very left-leaning seats that won't even come out and say that they are supportive of him or even want to campaign with him.
Yeah. I mean, what I mean by right down the middle is there's no, you can argue, right, that 2020 led to some people being like, I don't know who to vote for. Like, there's no more of that. You're either on the crazy Joe side or you're with us. Period. Hey, there's no in between.
I'll give you that. Yeah, it definitely has solidified where everyone is landing on this one. And
I mean, they can't even define what a woman is, and they want men to play girl sports. Like
when your support's in the low 40s right now, I believe it's pretty telling as well.
And he was lower than that before he
Yes.
he even had Democrats for like, they were like, you'd fix gas. And one of the worst things for me is think about the complete disarray or understanding of what the average American feels like when we finally got back under $5 in gas. Okay.
Yes.
First time ever in the southern region where we've had $5 in gas. Finally got under it, and he said he had tweeted out, Americans are going to feel a little bit better today because even at the end of the month, if we had extra $30 in our pocket, $30 can't even buy you a movie ticket no more.
No.
Like, so like, I get what you're trying to be a sentiment, but you don't need yourself patted on the back for every little bit of accomplishment that isn't yours.
Well, especially when you caused it to begin with.
Correct. You know, and I think the media even started like picking up on it because they said Joe's going to get the gas price lowered. And they were like, but didn't he say that he wasn't in control of the gas price?
So one of the other major parts of his speech here, and we did not include these in clips with this, was that he kept reiterating the Putin gas price hike, which I mean, any rational-minded person, even an irrational-minded person, would see that this had the gas price hike had nothing to do with what was going on in Ukraine.
Isn't it something like 8% of what we got from Ukraine? Anyway, I mean, not from Ukraine, but from Russia anyway. Like we were one of the least impacted by this from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Like Europe is like 39% or something crazy like that of their oil imports was coming from Russia.
Yes, oil and natural gas, absolutely. Yeah, they are. They were so reliant upon Russia that when Europe, when this happened, they did feel a massive economic impact. However, under President Trump, we had essentially become energy independent. But yet under Biden, with him rolling back all the regulations involving that, we started to rely somewhat on these folks, not to the point to where we had this massive economic fill once we removed Russia and Ukraine and all these other folks from our energy supply. But still, the fact that he is touting this and trying to make it seem like because of him, we are feeling this economic relief. I mean, it's insulting to think that they believe that we're dumb enough to fall for that.
Yeah, like, not to dabble on this too much, but another thing that I always found hilarious during this is it wasn't until Joe Biden was president that we actually had paper companies and, oil companies like Energy Transfer Partners do commercials, because people have been dogging the environment so much and save the trees and all this other stuff that literally doesn't make any sense. Everyone talks about saving the trees, but majority of our oxygen actually comes from the oceans and seas, right? So that's a whole other point. Plus, as I found out through the commercial, for every one tree that is taken away, the paper companies plant two, because supply and demand. Like, that's how why would they continue to destroy their own resource that plenishes their business? They are they control the entire supply and demand growth for them.
So that leads into something that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Before we get to that, I want to play this last clip, because this last clip kind of surmises the entire speech that he had and what he was saying throughout all of this. So here's this one.
I'll close with this. We're at a serious moment in our nation's history. The MAGA Republicans don't just threaten our personal rights and economic security. They're a threat to our very democracy. They refuse to accept the will of the people. They embrace political violence. They don't believe in democracy. This is why, in this moment, those of you who love this country, Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans, we must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving America than the MAGA Republicans are destroying America.
So that one in of itself, I think, was the most damning of all of them. So he mentioned the personal rights. Under Biden's administration, they have come after more personal rights than any other administration in the history of the country.
Yep.
But yet it's the MAGA movement, because they saw the Trump appointed justices strike down Roe v. Wade or send it back to the states.
Because abortion is a states' rights thing.
They are under assault.
We're suppressing people.
Under disproportionate or never before seen levels of assaults on personal rights.
This is the crazy narrative of propaganda that they're trying to spin, right? And I had to remind someone of this the other day, because a far left associate that I know, I'll call her a friend, but she's just lost, was, how can you support this? And I said, because it never should have been done at the federal level. Each state should have it. Yeah. The citizens of each state should have their own right. Now, I think that, for those of us who believe in states' rights, we have to live with what we believe and what we don't believe in that opinion. And what I mean by that is, if we believe that after 6 weeks, when the heartbeat starts and everything else, that this is where life is beginning, or if we believe that life is conception and that no form of abortion should be done inside of our state, then we have to respect the right of a state like California, who will commit murder in the third trimester.
Well, so and on that note, I would disagree with that one, because per our Constitution, the way that everything's set up, if the federal government comes out and passes a law, then it would become the law of the land under the supremacy clause. But I wholeheartedly believe that it is not an inalienable right that is enshrined within the Constitution.
Agreed. Well, and I will say this again, We are the only species on this planet that does not protect its own.
Yes. Well,
so that's why I have a problem with it, right? But the same person who is African American, she's African American, she's married to a white man, right? Was like, well, under that statute and that belief, they're going to come after interracial marriages, right? So I was like, so you honestly, in your heart, believe that a justice who's been in an interracial marriage for 35 plus years is going to create a legislation that goes against that?
Well, so when Justice Thomas made that mention, he was saying that these cases that had been cited under this this right to privacy idea that is not part of the actual Constitution, that is, or that he's saying that these were determined incorrectly, not that they should be, or the principles or the ideas behind it should be taken away. It's just that there is no legal precedent or no constitutional protections within it.
Correct. Which I think is a very important point, because we are now dealing with people who are taking the masses' ignorance and exploiting it and saying that, oh, look what he'll do. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you honestly,
again, that's something we're going to jump in our next one. You just like flying off the handle.
I get so excited.
But what we always like to do, and we always like to remind folks, is make sure that while you're watching this, make sure you hit the like button and the share button. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the platform that you're watching the show on. And if you're able to, go to the website at conservativestalk.org and hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner. And while you're there, also sign up for our email list. That way you can stay up to date with everything we have coming out and moving forward, and you can really stay in the loop with everything that we're moving forward on. So because Jamie is so eager to jump into to everything with this, let's go ahead and run into it. So the topic of this one is this part of the simulation? So Jamie and I have been involved. Jamie and I have been involved with politics for quite a long time. So this is kind of our give back into the society that is not too familiar with some of the inner workings within a lot of the legislative process, or at least the most recent legislative process, in getting things passed and getting it done, and the long game and the short game within politics.
Yeah.
So what we're referring to here is kind of, I don't really like using this term very much, but almost kind of gaslighting in a sense. Well,
it's the game. And that's why I've always referred to it as is, there are some people try to refer to politics as war. Okay.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Well, but here's the thing about it. Okay. In war, there is a definite winner and loser. Mm-hmm. Politics is an endless war in a sense, or an endless game. And the reason why I refer to it more of a game than a war is because they may make a move and then we may make a move. And then if we see that their move is getting certain traction, then we may need to make the opposing move in a similar but different way. And so gaslighting is a pretty decent way of looking at it, because a lot of times in ramping up the energy is what really gets everyone else motivated when you started to see this stagnation of where, things are going. Mm-hmm. You don't ever want to taper off in politics.
Yes. Oh, that's very true. So one of the things that, and for I would say the perfect example of what we're describing here with this would be the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
So in, 2019, AOC came out with her piece of legislation that I think it was like 2 pages. Yeah, 2 or 3 pages long. That was written in green crayon that she proposed to the House. It was everything from getting rid of cows and cow farts to how or to what vehicles you were able to drive, and you having to pay a tax based upon what carbon level your local authority said that you're releasing, that you are polluting into the atmosphere. and establishing a police effort that would come in and hold up those principles on that. But I will have to give her credit on that one, because it was a wildly outlandish idea at the time. However, it is 2022, and I would say 95% of everything in the Green New Deal has either been signed into law or is being pursued to be signed into law.
And if you live in the metro area or frequent it, like if your homestead is inside of the metro bandwidth in most places, you already have to do an admissions check anytime that you go do your tag renewal or anything like that. And that was around that same time frame. I want to say between 2016, 2019, when she was pairing that up.
Not to mention the most recent rise in these whole ESG credits.
Yeah, that's true too.
With moving forward with even business loans. I have been in contact with multiple businesses that are in the firearms industry, and they have not been able to secure loans or to secure funding to be able to continue operations, because they have what these groups or these third-party groups are deeming them as a low ESG score.
We have reached the point to where our business society has become the socialist society of China.
No, absolutely. As it says on the title there, is this really part of the simulation? So
we're getting there.
But what the whole reason why we brought up this entire notion is to kind of explain to you how some of this breaks down, how it works. So you have someone who, like AOC, that is known for launching incendiary type pieces of legislation and trying to pass through the most progressive things out there. Like you had, I'm glad that I forgot her name, but the member of Congress from St. Louis who broke down the gates to the McCloskeys neighborhood and then tried to have them arrested. Well, she filed a piece of legislation that essentially would allow convicted felons to be able to vote from jail. That was defeated. But now we're starting to see this new resurgence behind, well, they don't have to be convicted. They just have to be pending trial, which at the same time, they still don't have that right to be able to do.
Yep.
Under the current. So you see, what we're referring to here is kind of the Hail Mary pass. You have someone that throws the ball as far down as they possibly can in the hopes that all of the attention is going to be directed towards that. But at the same time, you have them passing smaller shovel passes right off the side there and gaining a lot of traction that's getting them down to the goal line.
So I'm going to let you in on a little bureaucratic secret for everyone. That is an objective for those who stay inside the cycle. What you try to do, if you're a good staffer, right? Bureaucrat man.
I had to.
If you're a good staffer, what you will do is you will have legislation ready, or you will have policies, ordinances, laws, whatever you want to call them, ready.
Mm-hmm.
And your first initial draft, you want it as gut busting as possible is the best way to put it. Whether you're on the right or you're the left, you want it as the most conservative thing or you want it the most progressive thing. Because your only objective is to get something passed. Because here's the trick. It's harder to get something large. It's hard to just get anything passed.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you get something passed, it's easier to expand on the law once it's on the books than it is to try to come out with a whole boast or a revision or a whole new code.
And so it's essentially the throwing a frog into a pot of boiling water versus slowly letting the heat build and the frog boiling there.
Mm-hmm.
You never just take or anything that is taken in whole or your whole mission taken in whole and thrown at once is never going to happen. You have to incrementally do it, which is politics. And quite frankly, it's negotiations 101.
So I like to use the analogy of skipping a rock. because like it may take 3 or 4 jumps, but eventually the stone's going to sink.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, we are definitely jumping as a country right now. That's for sure. So another one of the main reasons why we bring this up is to kind of rehash on some of the things that we have spoken about in the past, and taking the perfect example of this, the Green New Deal, looking at both the infrastructure program and this whole new little what is it, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the whole Build Back Better, the whole Build Back Better Act, all of that. So the infrastructure program, or the infrastructure package, was the Green New Deal point one. It was the first step into implementing what the Green New Deal was wanting to achieve and wanting to get out there.
And for those of you who don't subscribe to Asphalt magazine like I do, and who love infrastructure, this is probably the furthest thing from an actual infrastructure bill that you really could imagine.
Well, yeah,
right?
Only a quarter of it actually goes to infrastructure.
Well, not even that, right? So, like, if you want to build a new connection, this bill will not allow you to do it. If you want to, like,
and this is coming from the man who builds roads for a living.
It wants to transform a new area, it won't allow you to do it. They're looking for, and here's actually how they described it. If you have a former segregated neighborhood that is divided by a railroad, we will help you fix that.
So you'll pull up the railroad track and make it a whole neighborhood, even though the railroad track hadn't been used in the past 20 years.
Mm-hmm. I won't let you build a new road that may connect this neighborhood in a better direction somewhere else, but I will help you pay for ripping up that new road. I won't let you build a new bridge, but if you have a dilapidated bridge that also connects two parting neighborhoods that were divided by a highway during segregation at some point for a version of gentrification, we will allow you to spend billions of dollars to repair that.
Well,
if you have a freeway or a highway that has now been the dividing line for that, but there's no way of doing it, we will help you put a lid on it, which is literally, like, for those of you who don't know, like, again, subscribe to Asphalt magazine. What a lid is where they take a large concrete circular lid and build it over a highway and then build houses on it, because that's safe, right? And put whole neighborhoods on top of it.
Isn't that the Inflation Reduction Act that does that?
And the infrastructure bill, their counterpart, right? Because some of the things that, like, the Inflation Reduction Act has portions of it in it that allow for what basically the infrastructure plan missed. But the connecting communities portion of the, bipartisan infrastructure law, all that is all inside of that.
Oh, don't say that word in regard to that, because it was only the weakest of the weak Republicans that signed on to that.
I call it the bill because it's the BIL. That's the acronym we refer to it as.
You bureaucrats. I swear y'all going to be the
I'm just a bill, only a bill, sitting here on Capitol Hill.
Oh, man. Again, if you are interested in applying to be a co-host on the show, please send your applications. So we had all of this come out with the Infrastructure Act, and then we had the Build Back Better, which was going to essentially be the last nail in the coffin for America as a society. Luckily, that was defeated by holdouts, which frankly lost their nerve and were coerced and, let's say, bribed into supporting a less substantial package, which still spends trillions of dollars, which is a number that, quite frankly, I don't think the vast majority of folks can comprehend. I'll be honest with you, I have a hard time comprehending it. I mean, let's talk. So you have $1 billion. Imagine 100 billion. Now imagine 10 times 100 billion. I mean, that number is almost inconceivable. I mean, you're getting up to almost light year lengths at that point in time.
Yep.
So
21 trillion.
Exactly. So we're talking about a number that the vast majority of Americans have no real grasp of, which I would say is how they're able to get this sort of legislation passed, because nobody really has the comprehension of this. Most Americans are used to dealing with hundreds and thousands. They're not used to dealing with trillions.
Yep.
So it's just a number that they're throwing out there that they are essentially putting us into a spiral black hole pit of debt and destruction.
Yep. I have some reserved comments I want to use for the next segment for that.
Okay. So speaking of which, as always, we like to remind everybody to like and share any of the content they run across any of the platforms that we put our productions out on. Make sure you also subscribe to these platforms where you do see our productions, and make sure you also go to conservativestalk.org and hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and help us out with what you're able to. And while you're there, also sign up for our email list. That way we can keep you up to date with everything we have going forward and keep you in the loop with our national things that we have moving forward on this as well. So let's jump right into it with the next topic that we were wanting to discuss.
Because this is an interesting one.
Will he or won't he? But it looks like he did.
And here's why I find it interesting, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, President Trump, this was his idea.
Whoa, what?
Yep. You can go back and look at it.
That's something I'm going to have to fact check y'all now.
And because here's the other thing too. In 2001, Nancy Pelosi got in there and she was highly upset at the fact that President Trump thought he could do this on his own, similar to the way that Biden did without an act of Congress. Here's the thing, and here's the hard graphs, okay? Because
I'm fact checking that one.
Yeah. Here's the thing about it, right? When you start talking about student loan forgiveness or the Freed Vet Act, which is where part of what President Trump started with this, and then various versions of it. The idea behind it is that in GDP, there's always been the idea where investment and consumption are not able to make up or grow GDP. Government spending is supposed to do some form of intervention. All right. Now, what we have been accustomed to is on the investment side, where we will say, okay, well, we're starting to see that production is low inside of these businesses. So what we want to do is we want to come out from a production standpoint and we want to increase their investment, right? That is where we've started to see a struggle in the American people. Love the business part of it, but that's where part of the gap started to come in, because this is where people get an issue with buybacks and increasing corporate salaries and everything else, because now they have this extra flow of cash. So here's my point.
Mm-hmm.
To a reverse of that, what they basically did was they said, okay, here is a wage earner gap who should be buying homes right now. We have maxed out those who have already qualified, but we still have units that need to be under construction. How do we get these people to buy homes? Well, anybody between, 60 to 125,000 is spending anywhere between $600 to $1,200 a month in paying student loans. So they say, if we wipe that out, these people are going to spend that money anyway, versus putting versus majority of it being saved. They're going to increase consumption. Now, here's where the faultiness is in this, is all of that is an scapegoat to not say that we're in a recession. Because if you continue to admit that you're not in a recession and you want people to spend money and you're not going to keep giving it to them because people have had a hard time with that, what can you do to, if you don't control their income, increase their spending? The only way to do that is allow them to have more money. So I think that even if we didn't have a student debt crisis, I feel that they'd be like, oh, we're going to pay like Oprah, we're going to buy people cars, because their whole point in this entire thing is to say that we're not in a recession.
So I think you may have gotten confused with the Trump administration, the Obama administration, because it was the Obama administration that really instituted a lot of this student loan forgiveness. The Trump administration actually moved to end the vast majority of those. According to the articles that I pulled up on just
Turning Point also did a story on it, because here's the thing: the Trump administration never moved forward with it because they saw a great pushback, right? Because here's the other like weird thing is there's this we as conservatives view, and I will just say it, money as an old way. Okay. We are more laissez-faire people. We believe that the capital market should progress itself, where the rest of the world is moving more on the Keynesian theory. Okay. If you take elements of the Keynesian theory, like Nixon did, like even Kennedy did, okay, and you look at it and say, okay, how can this actually betterment what we're saying?
So just before we go any further, what he's referring to between the Keynesian theory and the laissez-faire theory, laissez-faire theory being that there is absolutely no governmental regulations or protections in the market, and it's essentially a free market in its purest form, whereas the Keynesian economics theory is a limited amount of government influence in the market and protections to essentially keep things like the like Black Friday from happening.
Yes. So the big difference is like when we say laissez-faire, we mean that, you know, honestly, laissez-faire is what the university system should have been. And it should have been that if you cannot continue to make it without escalating your tuition so high, then you should fail as a university, period. And we should not have anything there shouldn't be a student loan program. There shouldn't be anything that allows for you all to continue to increase the rate, because there shouldn't be a student dorm that has granite countertops that is leasing at $10,000 a year or $10,000 a semester, $20,000 a year to a student, right? The Keynesian theory basically says this is that we're solvent. We print the money so we can delete the money, which is another reason why in Keynesian theory, the whole purpose of it was we're really moving off the gold standard, and we're really going to implement this truly in God we trust bond fractional banking theory. Because, and this is where Obama got a lot of backlash too, because this jackwagon had the idea of, well, what if I just put, at the time it was like 15 trillion we were in debt. So it was like, what if I just create 5 Obama coins out of palladium and we just stick them in the reserve somewhere, or keep them in Fort Knox, and each one of them is worth $1 trillion. Technically, by Keynesian theory, you just wiped out all of our debt, because you're the solvent. You can create a different form of money that erases that. So from our theory, right, and the way that we believe, this is completely fallible, because what has just happened is we have transferred debt. When if you are a true Keynesian, you're like, no, you just deleted it, really. Because as a solvent, you can just do that. You can delete it. You can erase it off the books by moving it from one part of the balance sheet to the other. Your ledger,
and by doing that, you're also inflating the causing an inflationary rate within your economic sphere, and you are essentially devaluing the worth of your money.
So that's where the whole theory comes in, right? Because here's where I think that they failed in this theory, in this attempt, is your offsets do not match. All right,
it failed in a lot of places.
It's the same thing where we start talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, right? In the Inflation Reduction Act, you're going to spend 1.5 trillion to get 300 billion back in 10 years. It don't work that way, because now you got to equate for literally the time value of money that you've already lost on it. Okay. Same thing here. If you're going to go down this path, you can't piecemeal it, because we were at 1.5 trillion in student loan debt last year. Okay. Once the new school semester started, before he did this, we were at 1.6. All this does is keep us around that 1.6 range, right? So what's going to happen next year if it's not all wiped out? It's going to be 1.7. Then it's going to be 1.8. You're literally forgetting the time value of money and the like embedded inflation inside of that. So
essentially their argument for this and what I've been able to get out of this is that this $10,000 or $20,000, the Pell Grant, essentially covers the interest on your typical student loan, for your federal student loan. My question involving this is, why not come back in, remove the Bill Clinton policies where we have the federal government coming in and having or taking over the student loans process, make the schools do it, make the schools issue out these loans. That way they have an incentive to actually teach classes and teach courses that would better for society and actually provide for economic sustainability within their students, so whether they would have the opportunity to repay these loans that they had taken out.
Laissez-faire.
Exactly. It's quite frankly, it's the simplest way of doing this. Get government out of it. That way the taxpayers are not having to shoulder this debt and this burden, and put it on the institutions that are essentially bending these students over and having their way with them.
Well, and I explained this to somebody else too, because they were like, a good friend of ours was saying, she was a professor, and she didn't understand, even as a professor, how these kids were coming in with new clothes, new laptops, and everything else. One thing that anyone who,
it's mommy and daddy,
exactly, right? Because but here's also the difference, okay? Because then the question was, well, if that's the case, then how come mommy and daddy didn't pay for room and board versus buying all the new clothes? Look at the difference, though. Mom and daddy spent $5,000 in new clothes and new laptop that's going to last them half of their college year, where room and board is $10,000 on average per semester. So really, where we're starting to see the fallacy in the higher educational system isn't, because no one gives a full ride anymore. Most of your hope goes to the academic portion of what costs for your tuition. Where they're really getting people is the room and board, because they're spending colleges on average are going to cost you anywhere at minimum $30,000 to $40,000 a year, and it can be upwards of that, depending on if you're in private institutions or larger institutions or things of that nature. So half of that, though, is just your room and board costs if you live on campus. Kids are spending less if they get roommates and go off campus, right, and not settle for the debt. But those who are, I hate to say it this way, who are more academically driven than your average college student, want to stay on campus because they're trying to spend a good portion of time in the library and all this other kind of stuff, which is why you are seeing these higher academic people with all these advanced degrees be the ones who are so burdened by this.
Well, there's a lot to say with that as well, but these students are also not going for these gender study.
That's a whole nother point. Yep.
But another part of that being the whole institution of academics as a lifestyle. To where you never actually get out of going to school, which to say there's nothing wrong with continuing an education and learning and more and everything on that line. But there comes a point to where there's only so many degrees and certificates and
there's so many new letters,
things that you can add behind your name.
Well, so
before you start to cross over the line to where you're seeing a diminished return upon your investment.
And I will say this way, okay? And it's a hard pill to swallow, okay? There is a generation in our society who is in their 50s to 70s right now, who firmly believe that your value is set in the letters that you add to your name.
Well, that's because the people that had letters added to the end of their names during their lifetime and that they looked up to growing up, they actually carried worth and note and significance.
Correct.
Whereas these new programs that have been institutional that have been initiated, they carry no weight.
And I think the problem is that, right, it's these people have instilled that value of self-worth in a piece of paper into their children. So now their children continue to seek that acknowledgement, and it becomes a psychological problem as to where some people don't see the value in striving without an instructor or without a certain institutional name on a sheet of paper. Whereas like somebody like me, like as long as Coursera gives me a certificate for $50 a month, I'll take the certificate of advanced degree because the knowledge is what's key. Right. But some people believe that, oh, in order for it to matter, like I have to go to Emory or Harvard.
No, you're right about that. And those institutions have such astronomical endowments that, quite frankly, they could use their endowments to pay off the entire national student debt just in of themselves.
In the blink of an eye.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then recoup it. Like that's the thing that like scares me. And most of them don't even offer like, I'll go ahead and take it because I don't care. Right. Most of them don't even offer like a program, right? So like you hear like a Harvard or a Yale or something like that, you get a discount for being a legacy. Okay. Emory, there's no discount. 60 grand, little man. They want it in their hand, period.
Oh man.
And like you like at the end of the program, when you graduate, it'll be like down there at the bottom, legacy. That's it. That's all you get.
Oh, well, it's heartbreaking to think that now people who had absolutely no part in asking for these student loans or even went to school for themselves for these advanced degrees are now going to have to be saddled with upwards of $2,000 per household with this additional debt because of this move.
I mean, look, I get that, but like,
just because you don't have to pay $20,000 worth of your student loans now.
That's not it.
Not mean
that's
that
not
every
it.
American has to have to pay.
That's not it. And I completely agree with that. But I mean, like, are you gonna pay it anyway? Like, really?
I mean, you're gonna have to now.
No, you're not. Like, realistically. Like, I mean, it adds to the deficit, but like you can break it down per household, but who's gonna come ask for it?
Oh, they're going to when your tax rates go up.
That's not how taxes work.
Oh, they're going to.
That's not how it works.
Oh, they're absolutely going to, especially with the massive movements with the IRS that they're bringing all of these additional agents in because they're getting ready to ramp these extra taxes up to where they're actually going to be coming after more American households for extra.
The
taxes.
IRS is coming after those who have illegally done tax evasion and those who have done through crypto or land services.
No, not entirely. No,
they're.
No.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what this massive addition is. You don't bring in 87,000 additional IRS agents.
I'm not agreeing with it, but I'm not agreeing with it. Okay, they're bringing in 87,000.
Democrat talking point that you are putting back out there as far as that they're only going after these tax evaders. That's not at all what they're actually going to be going after.
Because who wants to be an IRS tax agent? They're trying to hire people because they'll have the department's retiring.
Well, yes and no. That will be part of the next 10-year plan, but at the same part of it, they are still ramping up the size of this agency.
I think the whole thing needs to be abolished.
Absolutely.
I'm not agreeing with any portion of anything that the IRS does. I'm just saying, like, all I'm saying is there's a certain portion of things that we're fearful of at some time that we may need to just like take a step back and look at the realities of it.
So I'm curious. Let's open that one up a little bit. That one sparked my curiosity there. So explain what you were talking about with that.
Out of the $1.6 trillion for student loans, all right, that is minuscule compared to what we're getting ready to what we have already done for the bailouts.
Yes.
What we are continue to pay for these $1 trillion green infrastructure spending packages and everything else from CARES Act to coronavirus to all of that. So my whole point is something that a large portion of the population actually benefits from, not just a small fraction of business owners, I feel is a little bit more valuable. That's all I'm saying.
and I can understand its sentiment. Although I would say that the benefit that it is going to be offering is going to be spread out wider upon just the population in general, and you are still harming the by doing these things, you're still harming Americans.
But it took more to bail out everybody's bad mortgages.
Oh no, I absolutely
that's
agree
all.
with you
That's
with
all
that.
I'm saying.
I agree 100% on that one.
All I'm saying is
that was
the generation that's upset at the generation who took out bad student loans is the same one that flubbed us in bad mortgages,
yeah,
right? So
that was a Bush policy too.
If we want to compare apples to apples, you know what I mean? Like
you're ignoring that. You're ignoring that comment, aren't you?
I'm talking about my president. If you
that was a Bush policy.
If you want to compare apples to apples, right? It was almost 2 to 3 times to bail out the bad mortgages that people were doing than it would take to bail out bad student loan debt.
Absolutely.
It's a similar bubble. And financial people, we looked for the longest time, what's the next bubble? Everyone has been pointing to tech, but because tech still continues to grow leaps and bounds, because we haven't even
because it's advancing.
Correct, and we haven't scratched the surface of where we can go with technology and the implementations of technology. That's the thing. So it was like, okay, we're waiting for this to bust, but it's not busting. What's that bubble over there? And then boom, there goes student loans. You're going to see a dynamic shift because of this, because again, now you're taking millions of people who had a fixed income or really a fixed cost of $600 to $1,200 a month. That's now working capital again. It's no longer a liability. It's now an asset that they can use to go back into the market.
Maybe. If it actually goes through and actually is
they already did it.
No, they haven't. No, absolutely not.
Dude,
it does not go into effect until the first of the year. I actually pulled up the fact sheet from the White House on that one.
I sat in class for a federal grant training program. A dude interrupted class and showed us where his loan was wiped out. It's completely off his balance sheet.
It may have been under one of Obama's
This
program.
was Friday.
Well, he may just not have checked it between then and that, because the actual White House fact sheet says that this will not be effective or even would not even be able to be. You'd not even be able to apply for it until the first of the year. That's what the White House fact sheet says. So,
it says, but I think there's a mix between the programs, right? Because those that are like, here's the thing: if you're applying for it to be wiped, like they'll even tell you like the 10 to 20,000, whatever it is between those loans that they're wiping away or whatever. There wasn't an application for it.
No, that's what the fact sheet says.
I'm telling you,
it explicitly says that you have to apply for it.
I'm telling you, that's
exactly what the policy says.
They're lying, because I swear to God,
the White House fact sheet that they're releasing.
What I'm telling you is that someone showed that their balance sheet on their student loan website, and it showed the difference in between the 2 days, and it was zeroed out. That was last week.
Well, maybe they got lucky and hit the lottery. All I can report is exactly what the actual fact sheet from the White House after the release of this information and what they put out in response to this said. But
I encourage everyone to go look up this fact sheet that Justin's talking about.
Please do. It will be on the White House website. You can pull it up. It's probably one of the top ones, because they really haven't had any major blunders between now and then. So I'm sure it'll be right there at the top. But as always, we kind of always like to remind everyone to make sure they like and share any of the content that they see that we produce and put out on any of the platforms. Make sure you also hit the subscribe button on any of the platforms that we produce any of our content for. And go ahead and go to our website there on the screen, conservativestalk.org, and hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and help us out with what you're able to. And while you're there, make sure that you subscribe to our email list by leaving your email address there, to where we can keep you up to date on everything that's going forward and everything that we want to see move forward with everything on this. So that leads us next into to the next topic that we're wanting to discuss, which I know is a kind of a sore spot for you in a sense. Your reaction to this deal, and that being with the social justice warriors.
Oh, that's stupid.
And what they're wanting to do with these kids with police. This is a clip from an actual video that is being produced, and where's it? It's a major New York group. They made it to where it's a major social justice New York group. So we know it's already going to be this as far left leaning as you can possibly get out there. So essentially what it is they're saying America's racist. It's institutionally racist. And they come up with 6 tips that can help you to reduce the amount of racism that may be associated with someone that is experienced racism in their life.
This is so stupid.
So what we're going to do is we're going to play you a clip, and this is what their 4th suggestion is in this entire clip for averting racism.
The United States has a long history of violence against people of color, disabled people, Muslims, immigrants, and LGBTQ people. In our current political moment, white supremacists and white nationalists have been emboldened, and as a result, public attacks are on the rise. Many people aren't sure what to do if they witness a racist or transphobic attack. Here are some ideas. Armed police presence often escalates rather than reduces the risk of violence in a situation. Because police have been trained to see people of color, gender nonconforming folks, and Muslims as criminals, they often treat victims as perpetrators of violence. So if the victim hasn't asked you to call the police, do not, I repeat, do not call the police.
Do not.
That's by far the wildest thing I've ever. If the victim hasn't told you to call the police, don't call them. What?
So you've got this poor little Asian lady that just got knocked out on the New York subway line, who's not able to give a response whether or not she wants to call the police. And you are standing over there trying to render aid. You're not going to call the police, according to this organization.
In most domestic violence situations, they don't want the police call because they don't want their other to go to jail when they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a problem. I have a significant problem with this because one thing that I've learned that African Americans, we have had an issue with is when you get over emotional when the police are around, that's the problem. You know what I mean? And
when your anxiety gets up, it just escalates everybody.
And I say African Americans, you know what I mean? But it applies to a lot of people, but it's seen largely in our community is because it just seems to happen more frequently and we talk about it more than anybody else, right? You don't really see any other culture that talks about interaction with the police being a issue and they always want to tout it to racism. But I've never had a bad interaction with the police. And you know why? It's because when the police show up, I shut up.
Yeah.
I shut up. I don't start yelling. I don't try to prove my point. I don't try to get in anybody's face or then say anything else. And I'm just going to end with this is the best example I have of this. It was the opportunity that I got to tell a young man and show a young man. A young man got into an altercation inside of a bar. They were separated. When they were separated, the police took him outside and took the person that he was arguing with inside. The other person he was arguing with just happened to be white. So he then begins to tell the officers that, you know what I mean? Oh, you just pulled me out of the bar because I'm black. And we just happened to be walking by. You know what I mean? We were there, but we just happened to walk by at the time.
Let's be honest, we were there.
We were there, but we were walking by at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the officer's a good friend of ours. And he was like, Jamie, please talk to him. You're one of my good friends. Talk to him, explain to him what's going on. And I sat down with that young man. I said, look, you are escalating everything. And you got to understand that when you start to escalate and the other person doesn't, you're showing that you're the problem. That's in any situation. It's not a race thing. They're trying, a cop is trained to see who is more irate than the other one. And that's usually the one that ends up going to jail because they take it to another level. Them as the person. So once that man calmed down, he realized it. He went over there and apologized to the cops and went right back in the bar. And that was the whole that diffused the entire situation. We have to stop looking at police officers as being a part of the problem and looking at them and saying, hey, you know what? Here's someone who is just like me. Here's someone who is trying to do nothing but peacekeep.
Mm-hmm.
They just have a level of authority to where if you get out of hand, then they have to detain you because that's for the betterment of the rest of us.
Absolutely. I know this is kind of going to throw a little wrench into that, but it's eating at my chest. So in that video, I'm going to have to call Wang. Did you see it too?
Yeah, I tried to ignore it.
I'm sorry, but I won't have to call Wang on that one. He kept saying that the police had been historically taught to terrorize the minority communities and their LGBTQ IRS code apostrophe S sign cosine communities.
Double squared.
Exactly.
PEMDAS.
Square root of. But yes, there. So that's what he's saying is essentially that that the police are nothing but a bunch of racist organizations and institutions, and that the armed police are the reason why all of these escalations happen. So because the police are going to be coming in, they're going to be armed because of a wide or the overwhelming number of the responses that they have involving these types of issues require them to be armed because they have a very serious threat against their own lives. So because they are armed, they escalate the situation. And that leads to what this guy was saying as being a greater number of attacks on the minority communities and the alphabet agency groups. Which I will honestly say, I can't think of any bigger lie out there other than global warming. So I'm just going to have to say this group is doing nothing more than taking their donors' money and burning it in a massive trash heap.
Propaganda, subliminal messaging to fit your agenda.
All right, well, funny enough, the reason why we're even bringing this up is because this video was played in local schools in Colorado. So they were telling children not to call the police if they see a
that's the scariest
violent
thing ever.
Attack.
Yo, that is the scariest thing ever. Because here's the thing. If you have ever been in a serious situation, you can't wait for the police to show up.
Exactly.
Like you cannot wait. Like if you have ever been shot at, been in a horrible, like mass violent altercation with groups of people, the one thing that your saving grace is hoping that the police hurry up and show up, because then people start to disperse from the area that you're in. Because until the police get there, you're fighting for your life.
That's the reason why everybody should be armed.
Yep. I can't tell you, like, there have been times where I've been in Midtown Atlanta, and I believe that if you live, visit, hang out, anything, go to eat in Atlanta, carry a weapon. I don't care what part, I don't care what bourbon, I don't care if you're in Buckhead, I don't care if you're in Bankhead, I don't care if you're in Midtown, I don't care if you even go to the strip club. Like wherever you go, make sure you have a weapon on you, because at any point, anything can happen. We were leaving a dance club one night and shots start ringing out. So everyone's ducking and dodging, but you don't know what's going on. And here's just some random person, right? Police show up and we're done. Same thing happened, leaving other establishments in that area. It's I can't imagine.
They honestly have what I would say is probably the most difficult profession,
hands down,
stateside.
Like, I get asked a lot why won't I become a police officer, and I can't because I will shoot someone. I hate to say it that way.
I don't have enough patience for it.
Like
they have so
the
much
level of patience that your average officer has is astonishing.
Yes,
because I don't even like spending that much time with my family trying to figure out their own issues. Like, you know what I mean? I'd rather just say, flip them the bird and leave because they're my family. I know I can go back to them. I couldn't imagine like having to deal with that with a stranger.
No, I won't do it.
Won't.
There's a big difference between can't and won't. Not only can't I do it, but I absolutely refuse to even try.
I'd rather shoot you in the pinky toe and keep going.
You're lost. So, as always, we always like to remind you to like and share any of the content that we produce and put out on any of our social media pages. While you're there, also make sure you hit the subscribe button so where you can keep up to date with anything that we produce on that within that platform. Also, go to our website, conservativestalk.org, and hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and help us out with what you're able to. And while you're there, also sign up for our email list. That way we can keep you up to date with everything that we have that we're going to be producing and putting out in the future. And a lot of our bigger projects that we're going to be working on here coming soon is something that you're really not going to want to miss out on. You're definitely going to want to stay up to date with. So let's jump right into to Buck's corner. I will admit it has become almost annoying.
It's
just
comical.
his belly laughing that he's done. I mean, if you haven't heard him throughout the show, we'll have to we're going to have to amp the microphone volume up a little bit because I think with these microphones it might not be catching him up there, but it's gotten to the point where it's distracting and annoying. So we decided that we would go ahead and put this out so he can get it out of his system. So essentially what it is that the Democrats actually they're actually saying that they're going to maintain control of both the House and the Senate after the 2022 midterms.
That's hilarious. Like the House is gone. The House belongs to the Republicans. Unquestionably. They are trying to like do whatever they can to try to save themselves and make their people believe that whatever it is,
there's still a chance.
There's still a chance to get them to come out and vote so they don't lose both chambers. I think that's the only reason why they even like make this joke.
Well, so there have been several leadership positions within the Democrat Party that have come out and said that they're starting to see via polling numbers a larger support for what they're doing, their agenda and everything, because they said they're starting to get through some of the campaign promises that Biden had put out there. They're starting to get issues like this student debt cancellation push. They're starting to get major bills and everything pushed. So they're starting to see a lot of renewed resurgence.
But when you go from
effort over there,
when you go from 9 to 15% approval ratings, like I mean,
well, I will say this.
That's a big joke.
I will say they have gotten some major legislation passed. It's just that this major legislation is the exact reason why they're going to be losing both chambers in 2023.
Because people are upset.
Absolutely.
Look, when it comes to
they're pissed.
Here's the thing, right? And I'm just going to say this last thing about the student debt thing. When it comes to financial concepts and everything, my whole brain as a human stops functioning and I become a computer because I'm like, oh, that's logical, right? But that's not reality. It's the same thing with every other bit of these policies they're passing. Some of them and is what we want. Like, I think everyone wants a infrastructure bill that actually benefits Americans and repairs our infrastructure that puts Americans first.
And not just deals with China.
What they did, though, was they said, oh, we're going to call it an infrastructure bill, but really what we're going to do is we're going to correct the gentrification that we think happened 50 years ago.
And institute part one of the Green New Deal. And kill American policy and American First agenda and everything along that line.
It's literally a bait and switch of what's inside the bill versus what the title is and how they present it.
And not to even, or something that we haven't mentioned for a while on the show, is the fact that they still have not secured our border.
Not once.
We're even starting to see a new wave of fentanyl start to come across our border, which is colored for not just for kids. Although I will say, I don't think that it is trying to be used to push specifically towards kids. I think it's kind of a branding and kind of a way that they one of the groups or cartels down in Mexico. This is a way for them to distinguish that this is their product versus anybody else's by having these colored Skittle treats and everything along that line. That's where my mindset lies.
I dated a girl who went to pharmacy school.
Careful now. Do not incriminate yourself.
I'm not. She went to pharmacy school, right? So I learned a lot more than I wanted to. But that's something that we do inside the United States too. It may be the same type, but depending on.
You mean like the little blue pill?
Yeah, something like that, right? Like, so like it may be blue in the South, but it may be green in the Northeast, and it's the same thing. That's how we in the United States, from a pharmacy standpoint, distinguish where someone may have gotten the drug. And that's also how we determine if the drug was trafficked from one region to another. Because if it's in a region where it's supposed to be blue for that dosage, what'd you say? If it's a different color for the dosage than it's supposed to be in that region, then we know that whoever they got it from moved it from one place to another, which means that they did not get it from a prescription.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got you. I mean, that's
so to your point,
something that I hadn't really considered with that one, but
to your point, that falls in line with where, if that's what they're trying to do, the coloring usually is for a trademark in a sense, to identifier.
What gave me the idea of that was the movie American Gangster with Blue Magic.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that movie.
But yeah, so
hey, Allie, her mom watches our show. Anyway,
but yeah, it's crazy to think that they actually believe that they're going to maintain control of these houses. I mean, one of the races that has garnered a lot of national attention is here in Georgia with Herschel Walker, and the new poll that just came out here recently shows that he's ahead of Walker now.
Look, here's the thing for me. Okay, it's beyond laughable that we're not going to gain the House. Okay.
That's an absolute
beyond laughable.
Assured.
I think that we need to really continue to charge our listeners, though, to get out and vote for Republicans, especially here in Georgia, for Herschel Walker and the rest of the Republican Senate candidates like Dr. Oz and some of the others. I'm just talking about my two favorites right now. But
Dr. Oz is your favorite?
That's a whole other thing. I just had that's a whole other ball game.
Again, we are accepting applications on the show.
You can go as far right as you want over there. I'm gonna be right here.
There's
still
nothing
carrying the
even
conservative flag.
So there is very little about that man that is even on the right hand side of any of it.
Not true. Not true. He's a great moderate Republican.
By moderate, I mean Democrat.
No.
Anyway.
By moderate, I mean...
I'm no fan of Dr. Oz when it comes to politics, if you can't tell.
Oh, he's about to be a fan of Dr. Oz across the nation, though, with the rest of everybody else, because we need him in the Senate.
I will encourage everybody to go out and vote for him in Pennsylvania. I will encourage every Pennsylvanian that may hear this radio or may hear this show to go out and vote 100% for Dr. Oz. I don't like him. I would never have voted for him in the primary, but that's who y'all chose. So more power to you.
The whole point is, and you heard it from Joe Biden in a clip earlier. We really need 3 seats for us. We need 3.
In all honesty, we're
going to gain more than that. I know we only need 2, but I like contingencies, and I usually do a 10% contingency plan because that's just who I am as a person.
You were able to understand what Joe Biden said? Because I'll be honest with you, I was a little tricky. I had to pull out
but you got to remember, we did
Joe
watch
Biden to English dictionary.
We did watch the clip 4 times before to make sure we understood before we started filming the show. So
that is very.
I had a minute to decipher after clip, and then watched it as our viewers watched it.
Well, again, we still had to bust out the Joe Biden to English translation dictionary. So,
yep.
That way, we were able to actually understand what he was trying to convey with him and his stroke.
But the main thing is you got to get out and vote Republican in November, regardless of whether in the country you are. We have very big races coming up in Arizona and Texas, especially here in Georgia and Pennsylvania, as we were discussing. Those are just to name a few, but these are some of the bigger races that are going to matter long term. And to give you an example, I mean, Joe Biden's even building one section of the wall in Arizona to bribe a Democrat. So that's the level of hypocrisy that they continue to prove. And so we just have to get out and vote and stand strong.
Yes. One of the things that we have not been saying here recently that I would really want to get back to saying is essentially, if you don't vote, what comes next is your fault.
It's your fault. Your fault.
So another little rabbit hole side, but I read an article today about how there is essentially this kind of advertising company that is putting out social media posts, and they're sponsoring these posts, these ads, to where it's saying that if you don't go and vote, we'll know.
What? That's like,
so, I mean, honestly, they're not wrong.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong. But how bold of you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
well, there have been a lot of people that said that they came out and voted in 2020 and 2021 that upon further look,
records show that you hadn't voted since 2012
and that your registration hasn't been up to date since this decade.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're not wrong. I'll put it that way, and we'll leave it at that. But I think it's a nice
all the insider trigger.
Well,
it's like,
so the word of the day for this episode was supposed to be transparency. So
that makes sense.
So as always, we have come to the inevitable conclusion where we always make sure that we encourage everyone to make sure that they like and share any of the productions that they see on any of the platforms that they run across our show on. While you're there, also make sure you subscribe to our show on that platform. That way you can stay up to date on anything that we're coming out, and you'll make sure that you're not going to miss anything. You may subscribe to Facebook and you spend more time on Rumble. So you want to make sure you're subscribed to both platforms for our show. In addition to that, make sure you also go to our website, conservativetalk.org, and hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and help us out with what you're able to. Every bit of our sponsorships goes right back into the show to help us be able to produce a better show, to get more content out there, to have a better production, and to really be able to expand and grow to the level that we're wanting and foresee ourselves as potentially reaching one of these days. Still going after that the time slot for what's his now
12 to 3.
Yeah, 12 to 3 time slot. That's the goal. Yeah, we
don't take Eric's spot.
Well,
I'm with it.
No. That's another one that leaves a bad taste in my mouth saying that name. But anyway, help us out with what you're able to on there. And while you're there at our website, make sure you're also signing up for our email list on the homepage. That way we can keep you up to date with everything that we have coming forward. We can keep you up to date on the national things that we're working on producing and some of the bigger ideas that Jamie and I have dreamed that are honestly could be considered outside of our league, but we're going to run ahead and we're Jamie and I are extremely bullheaded, and
it's been an amazing 7 months of growth.
It really has.
And to really get to this point to where
30 episodes.
To 30 episodes, I know. We're almost at the year mark from when we created the business. But anyway, to see this start to come full circle, and to see where we can take this to the next level and actually be obtainable and real. And now we're like literally in negotiations with some of these things that will allow for this. Mm-hmm. It's honestly astonishing and pretty cool and exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, thank you to Veterans Voices and also to Hugh Smith with Net News Network and helping us be able to grow our Hugh Scott, not Hugh Smith. Hugh Scott with Net News Network and help us be able to grow the platform and be able to reach a broader and wider audience and gaining a lot more momentum than what we initially had thought we'd be able to. So let's roll right into your favorite topic for the last part.
Boom. 66 days until we beat Stacey Abrams.
Oh, I'm going to be so glad we don't have to say that anymore.
I can't wait because Brian Kemp's going to be governor again.
Absolutely. He's going to take the next 4 years, and then we'll see what comes after that.
That's where it's really going to be exciting.
I'll give you that one because that'll be right after so it'll be 2026. It'll be right after the presidential elections in 24. So hopefully we'll see a massive shift back towards where we want or where we need to be as a country and as a state.
Yep, I agree.
Or at least a massive shift back towards where we need to be as a country and maintaining where we need to be as a state.
Because Georgia, we're doing great down here.
Oh, absolutely. Number one place to do business for the past decade.
Yep.
So, Jamie, any last words of wisdom? And I've warned you about what you typically say.
I know I can't. Don't chop it off. That's what I feel like. Justin was telling me that I can't do the chop all thing anymore, but it's protect the mail, so I'm just going to say for all you T's out there, stop chopping it off. And that's how I'm closing.
And on that note, we will see y'all next week.